I'm usually pretty good at the truth part. And so I tell Pastor, I said, man, you're full of grace. You need a little more truth in you. So what do you mean? Hey, Jesus was amazing. You realize that he went and what did he tell the Sadducees and Pharisees? Hey, you're like whited sepulchres? That wasn't a nice thing. He knew when there's time to give some hard truths and there's times to give some grace to people. I had to last week, I really felt that here in church because I came in here. You guys notice I haven't been shaving. I've been kind of growing my beard out. And, man, I love our church family. You guys are full of grace and truth. A lot of truth. Because as soon as I walked in, what I heard was, wow, there's a lot of gray in that. And yet I was so gracious, I said thank you. So there you go. I want to say thank you. I really did appreciate that. I thought it was really neat. It really did impact me to be like, hey, it's so much grace and truth. And it actually kind of does feed into what we're going to talk about today. But that grace and truth that needs to be in all of us. I think many times we find ourselves, hey, maybe I should have said something. And other times like, hey, maybe I should have shut up. I know with me, it's usually the latter. There are many times I need to, but I also think there's a time to tell people the truth. And one of the analogies I've used many times, and I've used it with Pastor and with others here, I said, look, sometimes you need to hear the truth, and it's not always a nice thing. But, I go to the doctor. I go to the doctor every year. My doctor, every time I walk in there, my doctor tells me that I'm fat, and I need to, he said, you know what, you're overweight. You need to exercise more and eat better. Now, does that doctor tell me that because they hate me? They tell me that because they care about me. Because the doctor, when I walk in, the doctor says, oh, no, you're perfect. Everything you're doing is great. That guy doesn't care about me. Sometimes we need to have that ability to hear the truth and speak the truth. So I thought it was really neat. I talked about it this morning. It impacted me all week. And I appreciate that Pastor puts those things out. Look, it takes effort. It takes effort to think about people and put things out. Hey, I just wanted you guys to think about this. I'll be honest, I wouldn't have done it had he not put out something on Facebook. I just read it. It was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then all throughout the day, I was kind of, hearing little things or, I'm at work with other people that we don't always get along. Sometimes I had to show a little grace. We have to remember to do that. There's also that thing to being wise as a serpent and as harmless as a dove. God needs to be us full of grace and truth. Now, I'll say this, ladies, you don't always make it easy. Sometimes you ask us questions like, does this dress make me look fat? Men, this is a trap. You can be full of truth and say, honey, why are you blaming the dress? Now, you better hope she's gracious. Because the one thing you don't have is the wisdom of the serpent at that point. You are dumber than a post if you answer that way. Remember, we need to be wise as serpents, harmless as a dove, yet full of grace and truth. I'll just leave it at that. It's one of those little things. Whenever I hear these things, these little, I can't help it, dumb things pop in my head. Now you get to hear me preach. You guys get to hear how my mind works. He was preaching about that, and that popped in my head this morning. I was like, I should be studying the Word, but I thought it was funny. That be as harmless, wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. Sometimes we lack that wisdom. And we need to look to God for that wisdom. God's going to have our back. God knows what it is we need to hear, and He knows what it is we need to do. That's one of those old sayings I learned many, many moons ago. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about Psalm 11. Now, if you guys remember way back, it's been almost a month. Brother Gene preached on Psalm 10, and then we had, I was sick, and then we went out and we did service out at the river, and then we had an evangelist here. So it's been quite a while since we've gone over this. But we're going to be looking at is Psalm 11. Now, back in Psalm 10, a little history. As Gene taught us, he was looking at at God and how we need to humble ourselves before Him, that He has our back, that He's going to be taking care of our enemies. And what I want to do is look at Psalm 11 is almost builds off of that as that reminder that many times we find ourselves in strife and we want to kind of take it upon ourselves. We have to remember that vengeance is the Lord's, not our own, that He's got it under control. And many times we try to take it. These are great psalms during a difficult time. But what we're going to look at is Psalm 11. Now it says, by a chief musician, a psalm of David. Obviously, many of the psalms are from David. We got to realize that David's life was tumultuous. But many believe that during this time that this was written was when David was actually fleeing from King Saul. That he was running away, that Saul was after him, and that he was in this great time of turmoil that God had said, look, this is my man. This is to be the king of the Jews. But they still currently have a king. Well, do you think the king took to it kindly? No, no one does. Has anyone here ever worked at a job? Has anyone here ever had to have the new guy and train the new guy? Has anyone ever really enjoyed training the person that's there to replace you?
Oh my gosh, that happened to me.
Yeah, that's always a lot of fun, right? Were you joyous in that? Were you happy to be doing this? By the way, we're going to fire you. I need you to train this guy first so we can fire you. That was the situation that Saul and David was in. Saul was not real happy about David being there. David was God's man, but there was turmoil. David had to go through some trials through that. This psalm is attributed to that time that he was going through a lot of these things. Now, do we know exactly? No, we don't. But it's something we can apply to our lives when we look at these times. That we're going to go through tumultuous and tough times. And we have this habit of trying to take things upon ourselves, or maybe take some bad advice. Realize there's going to be people around telling them, hey, you should do something different. Realize David was told earlier, hey, you need to flee, you need to go, you need to run, you need to raise an army, you need to do all these things. Well, it wasn't on God's time yet. But he would have been tempted to take that advice. He would have been tempted to do those things. So we're going to look here at Psalm 11. Said, the chief musician of the Psalm of David. In the Lord I put my trust. How say ye that my soul flee as a bird to your mountain? For lo, the wicked bend their bow, they make ready their arrow, and upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids try. His eyes behold, his eyelids try the children of men. The Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth. Upon the wicked he shall rain snares of fire and brimstone and a horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of their cup. For the righteous Lord loveth righteousness, his countenance doth behold the upright. So as we look at this psalm, it kind of starts off in the beginning. Like I said, as Gene taught, it was during a time there. God was saying, put your trust in me, that vengeance is mine, that I will have my say, that there's a lot going on. This is almost a continuation of that thought. This is a continuation that David was here saying, look, I put my trust in the Lord. Very first thing, David was saying, look, where do I put all my trust, all my faith? We talked heavily about faith this morning, about the gospel. Where are we putting our trust? David, right off the bat, very first thing, I put my trust in the Lord. Now, as we said, we've looked at David a lot. David was a man after God's own heart. But was David perfect? David was just as messed up as any of the rest of us. In many ways, you realize a lot of us, if we were to know David, we'd be like, there's no way that's a guy after man's own heart. Look what he's done. He's committed adultery and murder. He's torn apart families. He's an awful person. But God says, no, he's a man after my own heart. The reason he's a man after God's own heart is because David says, where do I put my trust? First off, I put my trust in the Lord. Does that mean that I'm not going to mess up? No. He messed up a lot. The biggest thing that David did when he messed up, he would acknowledge it and once again turn to the Lord. See, many times we have to look at where we're placing our faith. David was putting his trust in the Lord, even though knowing, it says, for lo, the wicked bend their bows, they make ready their arrows upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart. David's saying, I'm putting my trust in the Lord, even though I am currently being hunted. Look, when they say they're bending their bow, it's not like they're getting ready for war. They're at war. They're there. They're drawing the string. I am being shot at. People are coming after me. And they're coming after me because I put my faith in the Lord. He knows it. He knows where it's going. It's something we need to realize sometimes in our lives. You know what? David had not done anything wrong. He'd done nothing wrong. He just followed the will of God. And people came after him. You know, there's going to be times in our lives people are going to come after you just because you're a Christian. I profess faith in God. What have I done to you? Absolutely nothing. Are they going to come after you? Sure are. I don't know if you guys remember, I told this story once, and it was one where we had a neighbor that just kind of got nasty with us. Just kind of mean. And I was like, I didn't understand why. And what it kind of came with a realization was one day we were coming out, it was when we still lived in base housing. We were coming out, we're going to get in our car, and my neighbor's like, are you going to church again? Well, yeah, we go, morning and the evening. Oh, I guess. What it was, they were mad because we were going to church, and they weren't, but they knew they should be. And their attitude came nasty toward us. I hadn't done anything to them. Only thing we'd done is maybe, in a way, held up a mirror and said, hey, look, this is what you should be doing. I think God brought it on their heart, because it's not like anything had changed. We had done what we'd always done. We'd never had a problem. But I still remember, one day they were just nasty and mad. And I even remember saying, well, we probably should, but I don't want to. Okay, then why are you getting upset with me? It was God working on their heart. But they were having an attitude with us. What? I hadn't done anything to them. It was just sometimes people are going to come after you. Look, I know David had to been angry. People came after him. Also realize this wasn't sometimes we think of David as like, oh, he was just this little guy. He ran away. He didn't do anything. Do you realize why David wasn't allowed to build the temple? He's a man of war. He destroyed everyone that came in front of him. How did we get in the promised land? Let's go kill everybody. He wasn't a wuss. He wasn't a wimp. He was a leader of men, and men followed him for a reason. Men followed him because, hey, that's a bad dude. That dude doesn't mess around. That guy knows how to get it done. Do you think David was tempted to go take it into his own hands? Realize when he was a shepherd boy, he killed a lion and a bear? When he was a kid? Look, I'm telling you right now, a lion or bear comes in that back door, I'll miss you, and I'll think of you often. I ain't taking it out by myself. He had done that as a kid. Do you think this is a guy who's scared of confrontation? David was tempted to take matters into his own hands. He talks about it. Look, David's even saying, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? He's like, look, these people are coming after me because I'm a Christian. I'm a righteous man. I'm putting my faith in God. But what am I supposed to do? The Lord is in his holy temple, and the throne is in heaven. His eyes behold and his eyelids try the children of men. The Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth. What David came to realize was this. He's like, look, God's looking down. God sees everything that's going on. He is trying. When you say he's trying, he's testing. He's testing the children of men. He's putting them through trials. David was being put through a trial. David realized, I'm being put through a trial, and I'm being put through a trial by God. See, many times we realize, well, who are these evil people against me? Who allowed them to come against you? God does. I always talk all the time, look, the Babylonians, these were not a righteous, good people. But did God use the Babylonians? Sure did. He used these people. God said, look, I'm going to put you through some trials. I'm going to put you through some times that are going to be trying. I'm going to put you through some things that are going to be tough. Just as Pastor preached this morning, the life of a Christian is simple. Doesn't make it easy. David was realizing, look, this is simple. I need to follow the will of God. This isn't easy. I'm a man of war, and these guys are attacking me. What am I going to do? You know he's getting advice. You need to raise up an army. You need to go run, raise your army, come back through and conquer him. What we learned from later on in David's life, he's pretty good at that. He could have done it then. He was tempted to. He didn't. At least not yet. Later he ran off. But what he realized, he said, the Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth. What David was beginning to realize, look, vengeance is the Lord's. I'm going to follow the will of God. God is going to leave me. Even though if I do what God wants, I will be in his will, and God's going to take care of this. God's going to do what needs to be done. He said, upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire and brimstone, and a horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of their cup. David realized, he's like, look, I'm tempted to take matters into my own hands. I'm tempted to not follow the will of God. But what I realize is that the will of God is where I need to be. He's putting me through a trial. He sees what's going on. Those that are attacking me, God's going to take care of. He said, why? Because he hates them. That's a unique thing with God. You realize God can hate without sinning? So we can't do that. We just can't. Say, I hate you. When we say that, we're sinning in our heart. It's a given. But God can look at someone saying, I hate that. I can love that man, but I can hate that sin. I can do it perfectly without sinning. God says, look, his soul hateth these people, and upon them he shall rain snares and fire and brimstone and a horrible tempest. This shall be their portion of their cup. He said, what is this? This is what they earned. For the righteous the Lord loveth. For righteously the Lord loveth righteousness. His countenance doth behold them upright. God says, look, I love righteousness. You act righteously, I love it. I love it. I love righteousness. It doesn't matter what it is. He loves righteousness. He said, I love the man who's trying to do what's righteous. I love the man that's doing these things. Now, I look at it this way. Look at parents with their children. We love our children. They can be the brattiest, snottiest little turd in the world, and we still love them, right? And there's nothing we wouldn't do to protect them. God says, look, when you're acting righteously, I love you. I want to take care of you. And anyone that would put harm upon you, what do you think I'm going to do to them? I'm going to take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. You know, just like my kids. Someone's nasty to my children. Well, first off, I wouldn't advise it. They know how to shoot, and they're kind of mean. But, you know, some man's being just obnoxious to my daughter. I don't even care if she deserves it. I love her. I'm going to be like, it's time for you to sit down. Why? Because you don't need to go to prison. I'm old. I don't care. I want to rain down some fiery judgment upon that person. What we need to remember is that it's God's judgment, not ours. God's going to put us through trials. There are going to be times that things are going to be tough. I looked at this psalm, and it's just an interesting thing that as we go into this season, we go into the summer, we have a lot of things going on. We have Vacation Bible School. We have Outside These Walls. We have Joshua camps for the kids. It's about to be a very busy season. It's going to be a very trying season. There's going to be times we get short with people not meaning to be. There's going to be times where that grace and truth needs to abound. There's also going to be times we get attacked just because we're Christian and we're trying to do the right thing. What we have to do is remember to use that grace that God gives us to be as wise as serpents but as harmless as a dove, and realize that God knows what's going on. He's going through trial. He will take care of those things. That's not on us. Don't take it upon ourselves. Let God take care of it. Because lo and behold, what's going to happen is we try to take it into our own hands, we're going to become that person bending the bow, shooting those arrows. And then, what's this passage teach us? Oh, well, if we're the ones having vengeance in our hearts, now God's going to hate that. See, by trying to stand up for God, we can become the object of His disdain if we don't do it in His will. So that's one of those neat things I think within this passage. It's very short. It's a very short psalm. But I think it's just a reminder that, hey, let's put things in perspective. You know, one of those things of who's in charge here. God says, look, I got it. I know things are going on. I know things are tough. Put your faith in me. And this is one of those things where David showed that he was a man after God's own heart. He put himself aside and said, I'm going to just do what God has asked me to do. He says, look, I know I'm the righteous man in this. He didn't boast about it, but he wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Look, I'm being righteous. I'm doing the right thing. It's fun when we're doing the right thing. You can just say, I'm doing the right thing. David looked and he said, look, God has it under control. God knows what's going on in my life. God's going to take care of it. If I follow the will of God, I'm going to come out on top, and I'm going to be that righteous man. Because if I take it into my own, if I take it under my own strength, I'm going to become that wicked man. As many times I think we need to find ourselves, Christians, as good Christians, we do things with great intent, but we try to do it in our own power. And when we try to do it in our own power, we become that exact thing that God just preached against. That we have to do everything through the Holy Spirit. So, very short psalm. I think there's a lot in it. I thought, God does things in His time. For some reason we couldn't do this, but I'll be honest, what Pastor preached this morning fed right in. I was like, oh, this is great. Now, that's not by coincidence or mistake. God does those things and makes them work, but it's just one of those great things where it's like, hey, we can do everything through grace and truth. That even in this little psalm talks about, hey, having the right grace to follow God, but I know I'm right. I'm in the truth. That I'm doing the will of God. And it's amazing. We know we're in grace and truth. Man, life's easy. Like I said, the Christian life, it's simple. It's just not easy. We can do those things that God's asked us to do. So, very short little psalm. I don't know if there's any great dogmatic learning from it or anything. I think it's just to reinforce a practical lesson for our life. That we have to live in this world, and God understands that, yeah, we deal with discomfort, and we deal with anger, and we deal with just the issues of life. I mean, many times people think, oh, we're just complaining. Don't worry. If you're not in a trial, you must just be coming out of one. If you're not just coming out of one, don't worry. You're about to go into one. That's the Christian life is this. It's mountains and valleys. Now, what you learn is by going through that tough time, It makes this all the sweeter. And it makes the next mountain a little bit easier. You know, I laugh many times. You know these guys that climb Everest? You do realize that that's not the first mountain they ever climbed? That they climbed other mountains. Even to go there, actually, you have to submit all these other places you climbed and climates and times that you can prove that you can handle such a tough thing. Well, God didn't throw David into this out of the blue one day. He had climbed many mountains. And that's why David was able to rely upon God. Be happy when we go into trial. It's not fun, but realize it's God saying, look, I'm trying you, I'm watching you, I'm seeing what you're doing, I'm going to teach you something. And the amazing things when you go through those trials, the next one, well, I've been through bad things before. God will get me through. It's one of those things we used to say in the military. It said you have to embrace the suck. I don't know. It's a military saying. And what's that mean? It means that sometimes things are just going to be no fun at all. But you're going to get something good out of it. God says, look, Christian life, sometimes we got to embrace it. That there's going to be trial. But trust me, you get a payoff at the end. It gets so much better. And it gets so much easier. And all of a sudden you can go into something that as a brand new Christian that had been so hard for you, 50 years later, as a Christian, you're like, I can't believe I even thought that was hard. That was nothing. Many times I think about going to boot camp. One of the things in boot camp as a Marine, you got to go through. And when I was there, the new thing, it was a brand new idea, was the Crucible, which is a 48-hour event where you go through and I didn't even do it. It came after me. I did all the same events, but it didn't have a cool name. But what it is 48 hours, minimal food, and you have all these hikes and these things you got to do, and your culminating event is a 10-mile hike. Hike like it's fun. Take you and 200 of your best friends, put everything you own on your back, and go climb a mountain. That's what it is. So about 85 pounds worth of stuff. After 48 hours of no sleep, it's this culminating event it's incredibly tough. But at the end of it, and this is the cool thing for Marines, what you earn is you come out, and as you come walking into MCRD, because you don't know, they just drop you off. It's a trick they play. You're riding in the buses, and the bus breaks down. They just stopped. Everybody get out. You think you're done with the Crucible. You've done 48 hours, no food, a minimal food, no sleep. The bus magically breaks down, and you have to hike back to MCRD. So as you come in, you're tired, you're exhausted. And as you get there, they have the band playing. Everybody's all dressed uniforms. You have a formation, and you get your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. It's a big deal for Marines, or a little EGA, right? You get called a Marine for the first time. Because up until that point, you're called many, many other names, but never Marine. I was told by my drill instructor when I graduated that we used to be the scum under the rock. Now we're the scum on the side of the rock. What an upgrade, right? But you earn that, and then you have this warrior's breakfast where you get to eat all you want after 2 days, a bunch of guys, minimal food, pancakes, eggs, everyone gets sick. It's great. But it's that payoff at the end. It's this huge trial. But every Marine, I can say this, that's gone through it, they look back on that and be like, yeah, that was horrible. But I remember getting that breakfast, and now I look back, hey, we got to go on a 10-mile hike. Well, I've done this before. It's not fun, but I can do it. Sometimes that's the Christian life. And the funniest thing is, I can say this as a Marine too. Looking back at boot camp and all those things that were no fun and you had to embrace the suck, they were a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed it. We got to do a lot of really cool things. I got to throw hand grenades, blow stuff up. I got to spend 2 weeks shooting guns. I got to go climb on the world's biggest jungle gym. I mean, granted, the guys that were motivating you weren't the nicest people, but it was a lot of fun. Sometimes our life as a Christian, there's going to be tough times. But we can look back and be like, you know what, God, that was tough. But man, I learned so much out of it. It was, looking back, that was fun. Because you know what? You were paying special attention just to me. You were lifting me up. You were strengthening me for this life that you have for me. That I can put my faith in you no matter what. This little psalm, David knew how to embrace that. I think many times we need to look back and be like, hey, God, I'm going through trial. God says, yeah, there's a reason for it. Trust me, you're going to look back at this and think, wow, that was kind of fun. That's how twisted we get. That's the life of a Christian. You know, as Paul used to say that, hey, you should rejoice that you're being tried. His life wasn't easy. Look at what happened to him. And yet he could go through life and be completely content and happy. The Christian life is simple but not easy. So that was it today. Sorry, just off track there, but it's just kind of, I think it was an exciting time, and it was just neat how it all fed together. So I didn't have anything else. Pastor, do you want to close us? Let's just close in a quick word of prayer. Dear Lord, we just want to thank you for this time we come, gather in your house, hear your word. Now, Lord, just thank you, and I ask that you watch over and keep everyone as we go throughout our activities, Lord, that we would learn to look to you for your strength, that we'd be in your will. That, Lord, that you will strengthen us. You're going to make us your warriors, Lord, that we're going to be strong in you. Lord, I just pray that we go out and be, as Pastor once, as your word has said, as Pastor has reiterated, that we be wise as serpents, harmless as a dove, that we be full of your grace and truth. In your precious name, amen.